Professor Dr.
On spot, is it right?
We have with us Professor Dr. Diego Andres Golombek, UNESCO Kalinga Prize winner for the year 2015 with us. We welcome you, sir, to the land of Kalinga.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dr. Diego Andres Golombek is Professor Chronobiology Department, University of Quilmes, Argentina, and a distinguished professor, distinguished scientist of the world in the field of chronobiology research and also in the field of population of science. Dr. Golombek, we happily welcome you to the land of Kalinga, to Odisha, and we are happy to know that this is your first visit to India.
It is.
We warmly welcome you to this land of Kalinga, and land of Utkal, land of Odisha.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
I have some questions to ask you. You are a great personality in Argentina as regards population science is concerned. You are doing a lot many activities. Can you please throw some light regarding what activities you are doing actually in Argentina for population science?
Of course, yeah. I've been working in the field for a very long time now.
Okay.
I've been doing quite a bit of science journalism in many newspapers and magazines. But lately I've been doing more than journalism, popularization activities. I direct a series of science books, which is very popular, not only in Argentina, but in many Spanish-speaking countries. It's called Science.barks, and I write many of those books too. And I also host 2 or 3 TV shows, which are quite well known, I would say, in the country. One is on everyday science, one is on the science of the brain, one is on scientific interviews. And among many other things, I guess that the most important one is that I'm now the coordinator, the director of the National Program of Science Popularization, which is run by the National Ministry of Science and Technology. And we have the responsibility of the plans for science popularization in Argentina, both in Buenos Aires, where it is located, and in the rest of the country. In Buenos Aires we have a cultural center which is devoted exclusively to science, including an interactive museum called Place for Doubts, because that's what we want to show, that science is made of doubts and questions, not of answers. And we also have workshops and lectures and many other activities that put science in an everyday context for both students and general audience, families, youth, and so forth. Then in the rest of the country we have many activities regarding itinerary exhibitions, temporary exhibitions, workshops, some programs that join researchers with teachers so that they can develop a curriculum of science, science clubs all over the country, and many others.
Very good activities. You are doing excellent activities in Argentina. My next question to you: what is the state of affairs of scientific research and science education, and also science population activities in Argentina?
In terms of research, we tend to do relatively well on basic research, but the world is changing, and it is supposed that most scientific programs are going to go towards applied science, and innovation and patents and going to industry and so forth. It's a very big cultural change. We are not really prepared for this change, and it's going to be quite difficult because that's not where our strength is. And culturally, our scientists, we don't know really how to do it, how to go for patents, how to go to the industry and so forth. So we have had a very important growth of science in the last 10 or 12 years in Argentina, in terms of investment, in terms of salary, not so much in terms of results, but in terms of constructing a solid base for Argentinian science. What's going to happen next with a new government and new policies, I really don't know. That's in terms of research.
Education.
Education in science
in school level, in college level, in university level.
It's very good at the university level, very good really, because I think that our graduates are doing very well. Sometimes they go away for a PhD or a postdoc and they really do very well. Not so much at the primary and high school level. It's been said that if somebody could time travel from, let's say, 100 years ago to now, and that somebody would go to, I don't know, a surgery room in a hospital, to a factory, to I don't know, a place, to an airplane or whatever, they wouldn't understand anything about what would be happening. But if they went to a classroom, they would feel at home. Because classrooms have not changed in the last 100 years. Okay, we have computers, we have some changes, but they're minor. And that's something that is happening in Argentina regarding science education.
In school level?
In the school level. It has not changed. It's still very academic, it's still very encyclopedic, like children still have to memorize facts and dates and so forth, which are completely useless. And we are lacking a good system of for educating the professors, the teachers and the professors. So there's a lot to do there. We do participate in the PISA exams, which are international exams that have to do with science, and we don't do very well. It's at least we have a good diagnosis of where we are standing and where to go to. And in terms of science popularization, things have also changed a lot in the last decade. We had science journalism. Now it's professional, which is very good. Now we do have professional science journalists, which we didn't have before. And we have changed, and we have been able to go outside the limits of what was supposed to be science popularization. We can use fiction, we can use humor, we can exploit TV shows, we can exploit books and magazines and so forth. However, there's a lot to do that's mainly centered in the 2 or 3 big cities of Argentina, not in the rest of the country, and it should reach everywhere because science popularization is for everybody.
We are extremely glad to know that you are the first scientist, first science popularizer for Argentina to win the UNESCO award for science popularization. This is highly prolific award and highly distinguished award in the world for science popularization. We are extremely happy in Kalinga, the land of Kalinga, from which place this award is originated. What is your impression regarding science population activities in other South American countries, Latin American countries, vis-a-vis your country?
We know quite well what's going on because we have a network of science popularization in Latin America called the POP network, which is linked to Unesco as well. So we kind of know some of the activities that are going on. In some countries there's a lot going on, like in Mexico, in Colombia, in Brazil. In others there's close to nothing or very little. Most countries have at least one science center or science museum, which is something to start with. Many don't have science journalism and have to rely on foreign cables and foreign news. So the situation is very different in different countries. I guess that Argentina is doing relatively well, even though some countries have a much larger tradition in this. And again, I have to mention Mexico, that every state in Mexico has some kind of popularization activity.
Even scientists from Mexico have also won UNESCO Kalinga Prize.
Yes, of course.
Even scientists from Brazil also.
Of course, I know.
Things are changing.
I know, because you're doing lots of things, and that's very welcome. We are not doing many joint projects, which we should. We should do more collaborations, but we are getting there. This POP network is really growing. The next
collaboration in the field of science popularization, as well as in the field of scientific research.
I'm talking about popularization.
Popular science.
In research we do have lots of collaborations. There is no way of doing science without collaborating. So we need to do it. Science has to become interdisciplinary, and the only way of doing that is collaborating with other people. In terms of popularization activities, there's much more to do.
As regards the developed nation, lot many activities happening in USA, Japan, and other countries, France. Developing nations and developed nations. Science population activities, how you visualize?
We need to grow a lot, I'm sure about that, because people believe in our countries that science is not something that has something to do with them. I mean, no science, I'm independent of science, okay, I learned some science at school, but that was it. And that's not it, and that's absolutely not it. You need to have continuous education on science, and one of the ways of doing it is with non-formal education through, for example, science popularization programs. And we have to learn a lot of developed countries. The US in some aspects, again, if you go to small towns in the US, they are absolutely ignorant about science.
Yes.
It's not a way of looking at.
Yes.
Maybe more from Europe, I guess that in the UK, in Germany, in France, they have very good programs throughout the countries, in Japan as well. So we need to learn the good things that they are doing and forget about the ones that do not apply to us. In particular, the British world is very prepared in terms of science popularization. I mean, the Royal Society has been doing science popularization lectures and activities for the past, I don't know, 300 years or so. So they know how to do it, and they are brave enough as to do it with humor, right? The usual British humor that they use, ironic and so forth. They do that in science activities as well, and we have to learn that because we are too much serious in what we do, too much solemn in what we do.
Very good, very good. But people say, regarding scientific research, when they compare with science popularization, people say, critics say, scientific critics say, people, those who are not successful in scientific research, they opt for science popularization. Do you agree?
No, absolutely not, and
Yes.
there is proof for that.
Yes,
There,
yes.
there are a few papers stating that the best scientists are usually involved in science popularization in terms of quantification of impact factors or age index or whatever. Usually they're the good ones. That's trivial in a sense, because of course those are the scientists to which journalists are going to ask more questions or more interviews and whatever, so it's relatively trivial, but they do get involved with popularization activities. I don't agree at all. I believe that all scientists have to do popularization activities, especially the best scientists.
Very good, very good. I also agree with your impression, with your idea, your vision. Yesterday you told in a meeting, genes have limitations, whereas the dreams have no limitations.
Yes.
That means a boy, whatever he wants to do, whatever he wants to achieve in life, he can do it. Can you throw some light on that?
Sure.
Yes.
Genes are very fashionable these days, and molecular biology is very fashionable as well. And really, we have advanced a lot in our knowledge of molecular genetics, and we know that what genes do. I mean, genes are instructions for constructing tools which are called proteins. And it's fascinating, really. It's our advancement in this knowledge in the past 50 years is amazing. But I think we've gone a little bit over the limit in terms of the role of genes in sculpting who we are.
Yes.
If you read some reviews or some books, it seems that we are just a bunch of genes. We're just what genes want to make out of us. And I think that's not the case. Genes are very important. But actually, if you count the number of illnesses which are related to a single gene malfunctioning, they're less than 10, right? Most illnesses have to do with many genes, and more than that, with the interaction between genes and the environment. So the important thing to take into account here is that we are actually two sets of things. One is genes, of course. One is inheritance, genetics, what we got from mom and dad and from our grandparents and so forth, and we cannot deny that. And again, as you said, that's kind of fixed. Not completely, because now we know about epigenetics and we know things that might change that as well, but it's kind of fixed. But the other part is environment or culture. It is what you eat, your education, your family, your exercise, your friends, and so forth. Sometimes culture works completely against you. I mean, if you are in a very poor environment in terms of poverty, of bad diet, of bad health, and so forth, of course you won't be able to develop yourself very well. But if your environment is rich, if you get the correct stimuli, the correct school, the correct teachers, the correct food, and so forth, it doesn't matter what genes you have. Right? It does matter up to a sense, but then you can do anything you want. You need a good environment for that.
Environment has a major role to play in building a character, building up a man.
Yes.
Vis-a-vis the gene factor.
Exactly.
The gene factor vis-a-vis the environment, they have the respective roles in building a character, building a man, or building up a image. Very good thing you have told it. I have next questions. Many distributional scientists, even people who are in literature, like Bertrand Russell, man like Bertrand Russell, who is a Nobel laureate in literature, he also got a Kalinga Prize. He's not a man of science. You see, that means Kalinga Prize is widened vision. It's vision, not within the framework of scientific people or scientists, but even it has gone to the literature, people who have dealt with the literatures, like Bertrand Russell.
Yes.
Throw some light, please.
Well, I'm not surprised at all
Yes.
by that, because again, if you think about science being separate, independent from culture, I think you're wrong. Science is completely dependent on culture, and this is a prize for science communication, so of course writers should be awarded this kind of prize, and broadcasters and so forth. In the case of Bertrand Russell, he was not only a writer, but he was only a wonderful logician and had big knowledge about mathematics and so forth. And he worked so much for peace, for international peace, and he gave talks everywhere, and he wrote wonderful books and so forth. So I mean, being in that company for me is such an honor. Being in the company of a Bertrand Russell, of a Margaret Mead, of a Richard Attenborough, or Louis de Broglie. I mean, the people that have won this prize are amazing. I don't know what I'm doing here.
This prize was instituted by the legendary Biju Patnaik.
Yes.
The founder of present Chief Minister, father of present Chief Minister. What is your impression about Biju Patnaik? Do you know him? Do you know his work? Do you know his vision, his dreams?
I've been able to know him because of this trip and being here in Odisha and the Kalinga Prize. And actually, he was a real visionary. His life story is amazing, being a pilot and doing all the things that he did. And he seems to have been a very wonderful chief minister as well, because he was re-elected many times, and people remember him very fondly. What I can speak about him is about this vision about an international prize on science communication. I think it was really visionary for two reasons. One is because of installing a prize on science communication in the 50s, when nobody was talking about it. I don't know where he got the idea, what was his influence, but it was really something very new for that time of our history. And the other one is naming it the Kalinga Prize. If we internationally know about Kalinga, know about Odisha, a little bit about India science communication is because of this prize. So in a single action, he really fulfilled two wonderful goals: to have the very first and most famous prize on science communication, and to put Odisha and Kalinga on the world map.
You are in Odisha since the last 2 to 3 days. How do you experience Odisha?
It's been wonderful. I've had a very warm welcome, especially by the Kalinga Foundation Trust members. On the first days, I was absolutely busy with commitments and talks and visiting schools and great homages and receptions. And now I've just started to visit the historical heritage of Odisha, the Karnak temple and so forth, and it's even more amazing than what I thought.
What is your roadmap for the future?
Going back home first, which I'm missing, but I still have a lot to do in both my worlds, both in the world of research. I have a wonderful lab, and we need to get it growing much more, and also on science communication. We have started many programs now that have to do with all of the country, not only the capital, and I want to see those programs grow and really become brilliant, and to show the people that science is part of their lives. That's my goal, and I hope to be able to work with that.
How do you visualize the global perspective on science population?
It's been changing. It's been changing a lot, actually, if we consider what happened in the last, I don't know, 50 years or so. It's been gaining momentum, gaining space, although it's fluctuating quite a lot. Many newspapers that used to have a science section don't have it anymore, because it doesn't seem to be profitable. They don't get ads, so that's not really good. It's difficult to get a space on TV for science popularization, but then once you get it, the people are very interested. So the same happens in newspapers. Then as the world policies change, also the space awarded to science, research and popularization also changes, and we can see what is going on right now in the US with a very conservative government that is saying that they don't want to support science anymore, at least state-funded science. So if that's the way things are going to go, the prospect is not very good for science popularization in the short run. But then I'm sure that people will realize that we do need science, and we do need science communication. So in a few years, at the most, a couple of decades, things will start growing again. So it is fluctuating. I'm very optimistic about the way things have been in the last 20 years or so, because we have lost a bit of solemnity.
Yes.
We have been able to tell science without technicisms, without being solemn, without using ties, and using humor, using fiction, using different formats, and that has been very good. We need to do more about that and be brave enough as to push the boundaries of science popularization towards we still don't know where.
Yes. What is your impression about India? Scientific research, science education and science promotion activities.
I don't know that much as to give my opinion, but what I have noticed is that India has a very strong historical heritage in terms of scientific research that was kind of lost with all of your history, invasions and colonies and so forth, and you're gaining it again with some very strategic decisions. For example, deciding where to invest in science and technology. I mean, you had the Green Revolution in the early 20th century, which you needed because you needed to feed so many people, and it worked. And I think that you realize that the only way of coping with a nation with, I don't know, 1,200 million people or so, 1,200 million people or so is through science and technology. So you're investing a lot in technologies like biotech, nanotech, information technology, things that have to do with health. So it's the only way of doing it. You're not a small country, so if you don't rely on science and technology, you're lost. And I think that you have seen that in the last decades, and that's the way we are going. I would foresee that in the next 10 years, India is going to be one of the potencies, one of the powers of international science and technology if you follow this path.
That means you are fully convinced that science can change the fate of a nation.
Yes, absolutely.
And Pandit Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, was a strong believer that science can change the face of a nation, face of a man, the face of a civilization.
Yes.
What is your impression about it?
Yeah, well, Nehru said very famously that a poor country, and when he was Prime Minister, India was really very poor. You were coming out of a war, right? A poor country cannot afford not to support science and technology, which is the opposite of what people would think at the time. Hey, we are very poor, we have to work on health, on education, on how to feed people. Of course you do, but you have to do that with science. And that was the vision of Nehru. He started this 60 years ago, and you're continuing in this path, which is the right path.
Now people are looking at India and China, or I can call it Chindia, China and India, Chindia. People say that 21st century was the century of Asia, century of China and century of India. If I go back, 19th century was century of Europe, 20th century was century of America, and 21st century will be century of Asia, more particularly century of China and century of India. What is your impression?
I'm sure it's that way, and it's not the future, it's the present. I would expand it a bit more with the Asian tigers that probably need to be involved, Malaysia, Singapore. Singapore is doing amazing things with education. South Korea is doing incredible things with science, research and technology. So the whole part of the continent, of the Asian continent, is probably going to lead us in the next century in terms of science and technology. It's already doing it.
So you fully agree that time is changing, situation is changing, civilization is changing, and march forward in the footpath of science.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if we like to complain a lot. We like to think that we are in violent times, and that there is a lot of differences between the poor and the rich, and it's true. I cannot deny that. But we are probably in one of the best times of humanity in terms of violence. We are not doing that bad, even though bad things are happening. In terms of life expectancy has grown so much because of science in all of the countries, even in poor countries, because you're getting universal vaccination and so forth. The food quality, the feeding quality is getting better, although of course we need to take into account that some people are not eating enough or not eating well. But even that is changing, so we have to be optimistic about the future, because we have to trust science and technology that they are marking the path to go with, and we hope politics go along this path.
My last question to you.
Yes.
What is the future of science, and what is the science for the future?
I think there's only one science. I don't believe in basic and applied sciences. Science is a way of looking at the world, a rational way of looking at the world, of asking questions, of being curious and so forth. So that should remain forever, because that's part of human nature. Asking why things happen, doing experiments, observing, trying to understand nature at its best. So that's the past, the present, and the future of science. Of course, what has been changing exponentially is technology, like the use of science in different terms. When I say exponentially, I mean that we are duplicating our computing power every few years or months. I don't know how much it is, but it's going to boundaries we haven't known before, and we don't know where that's going to get us. But again, I trust in humanity. I believe that we are going to be good users of technology. And science is not good or bad. It's nothing. It's neutral. Science is science. Of course, science is made by scientists, and scientists can be good or bad. They do have interest. They do have commercial interests and so forth. So we have to be careful about that, and we have to really put regulations to scientists, not to science. Science cannot be regulated, but scientists need to be, because they are in their hands is the future of humanity.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.